Well, accept those accolades from you. I appreciate that very much. That's very kind. Thank you. Probably overdid it a little bit, but.
Remember those days?
Well, oh yeah.
Okay, I thought he was getting so old he forgot. But.
I do most everything else. Well, I don't know quite where to begin. Maybe I can give you a 30-second so-called history of our company. My father started in 1939, and my brother and I grew up in the business, and he passed away in '52, and we bought what there was to buy for $3,000 from my mother, and we were kind of off and running. The first really job that put us on the map was we did Michael's original 22-foot wide store. And I'm pleased to say we've done every one of their expansions since then, and so that kind of put us on the map, so to speak. The only problem is Gus still owns one of those 22-foot buildings down there. And I assume you had to approve our working on your building there.
You always do such a great job. I wasn't worried.
Anyway, in '83, my brother was killed in a boating accident, so I was kind of left with all the marbles, so to speak. But my two sons were coming up, and in the later part of the '80s, we started to give the stock to them. So currently today, they are, I work for them, so I have to be nice to them, so they pay me that meager salary. And of course, our branch manager, I got a old court with Scott also, because he runs the show in the Rochester office. But anyway, we continued to struggle along, and one of the biggest things we did was in '71. We got an opportunity to get into the affordable housing business, and not the business necessarily, but development of affordable housing. And we did the first affordable housing project in Rochester, which was a 104-unit Section 236, as they called it in those days, out on 31st Street, Northeast, I guess it is. Coincidentally, I sold that building for my general partnership interest and recently bought it back, and now we're in the process of bringing it, it's over 40 years old, so we're kind of bringing it into the 21st century and doing a major rehab out there. But anyway, after that we went on to do some more of those kind of projects. Gus did all the showy ones in downtown Rochester, and I messed around with the little Mickey Mouse 45-unit deals in different towns, and one in a couple in Iowa and one in Wisconsin. Anyway, that went pretty well for us, the development business. But then the government decided it was too expensive, so they discontinued funding those subsidy for those programs. So we kind of got into the shopping center business, and I found out the hard way that the banks are more than willing to give you money for shopping center development, but they want it back whether you got tenants in there paying rent or not. So that almost turned into be my demise with the shopping center development business. But most recently now we've they came out with another program called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. So we've been doing some of those projects. We did the first one here in Rochester out on 55th Street called Georgetown Homes, a 104-unit townhome project, and I've done 3 or 4 more. And the fun part of those deals is getting city council approval. and I mean, I guess, I don't know quite how to say this, but I almost get the feeling that the neighborhoods are running the city these days. I mean, I'll tell you, if you don't have them on board, our city council, all due respect, Mr. Mayor, is not gonna, if they got 50 people down there opposing your project, it takes pretty gutsy council to go ahead and approve it. So a lot of them, it's a struggle to get them approved. And Gus didn't have that problem downtown because wasn't anybody to object. Although you got to tell them that story about, I hope it's true, about Northgate when you went for the final approval on that and all the neighbors. Tell them that story.
Well, okay, I'll tell you a story about Northgate Plaza. I don't know if you know where it's at, but it's on 11th Avenue Northwest, 151 unit elderly building. And we bought that land from Bachman's. They have their flower place up there. And we designed what we thought was a nice looking building. All of a sudden, the neighbors, they came and they opposed it. And they used things like, well, they'll cause shadows. So on a house. So then we talked to shadow experts, and they proposed. So we had to come to the next meeting and say, no, I forget solstice and this and that. I don't know what the hell they were talking about. I still don't. But anyway, we passed that, and then they said, well, there's too much traffic, and it's dangerous for our kids, and on and on and on. And they kept on going there, and I kept on going to the meetings, and finally, there was going to be the last meeting, and I thought, how am I going to get all these goofy neighbors off my back? And so I had built Park Towers before that. That's the white building on Broadway. And so I got a hold of those old folks, and I said, look, I did you a favor when I built the place. Now, I want you to do me a favor. What's that? Come to the city council meeting, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get buses. I'll have buses down there, take you up there, and I'll take you back home. But we got to get there a little early, because I don't want the neighbors to have any place to sit. So we went down and we picked them up, and we loaded that console. And the neighbors had speakers get up there and tell them how bad we were, and how this is going to be this and that going to be that. And these old folks went up, and it was like, what does people say, apple pie and your parents are the two greatest things in the world. Well, anyway, the old folks won, and that's why that's how Northgate got here. And it was a real battle. I think that was the beginning of where neighborhoods were powerful. But there was one, I got to tell you the story, because this is the best part of it. There was a lady there that was kind of she was the one that rounded everybody up and told them how bad things were and this and that. So along the way, I got so sick of hearing that we're going to devalue their property. Myself and a realtor called Leon Shapiro, we told them, we'll buy your home. If you think it's going to be devalued, we'll buy it. We'll get an appraisal today. We'll buy every house in the block and every one up the street. And of course, they didn't take us up on that. They still have the home. Well, so we kind of won that psychological war. But this lady that was the gang leader, she is out there crying and just making it just drove me nuts. I'd have to listen to her for 45 minutes. It wouldn't bother me today. I can't hear her anyway. But back in those days, it kind of bothered me. So anyway, we finally won. The thing is over. We start construction. I get a call from her. Her name was Julie. She said, oh, Gus, you know, now we know we have to be neighbors. I think we should be friendly. And I said, well, absolutely. I love to be friendly with my neighbors. And she said, I got to ask you for a favor. What's that? Can I get my mom in your building? I mean, and we had a mile-long waiting list at that time. But I said, you know, Julie, I want to forget all the past. Yeah, I'll get your mom in. So her mom got in, despite what she did to me. See, you're not supposed to. The Bible says no grudges. So no grudges.
Well, kind of a hitchhike onto that, we did 2 buildings right north of Gus's Northgate Plaza, and we weren't as smart as he was about loading up the council chamber so that the anti didn't have a chance. But just to give you an idea, it was a very similar story there. One of the ringleaders lived in your building there, and well, several of the ringleaders did.
I told the ringleaders how to kill the project.
Anyway, he came around too after we got the building going, and he said his niece had moved into the building, and he wanted to take credit for sending her to rent an apartment in our building after he drove us nuts. But show you the way they operate. There was one guy there that, you know how they have this deal in the council chambers where you put your plan down and it shows up on the screen. This guy actually stood up there and was redesigning our site plan in front of the city council after we spent about $150,000 with Colby to you know, do it and do it right. Here's this guy. I mean, that's the level of intelligence you get at some of those meetings. And
did you pay him $150,000 too?
You know, that's the what they call the NIMBY syndrome. I'm sure you've all heard that. I have one story in relation to that. For Minnesota Housing is the one that provides the tax credits through the federal government and the federal tax program and all that. But the commissioner, Kit Hadley, who was there for many years and ran the agency with a very amount of skill, talking to a group like this, she made the comment once. She said, you know, everybody thinks we're short of money in order to get the affordable housing problem solved. She said, they could give me all the money in the world, well, maybe not that much, but and more money than I need, but I still would not be able to solve the affordable housing program because of the NIMBY syndrome. So you can see how important that is, or how relevant that is. And I wish I had some positive things to say how to deal with it, but Gus has got a good one there with blowing up the council chambers. I mean, it goes without saying, you have to start meeting with them early on and make them think they're part of the deal. But even that, you just aren't going to convince some of them. And it's traffic and crime, and we haven't run into the shadows because we haven't done a high-rise, but I've heard of that. But I guess another thing that helped out was my grandson made the final presentation for the approval on the last project we did there, and he spent countless hours. They were concerned about increased crime in the neighborhood, so he spent countless hours researching the amount of crime that's there, where it was, what particular areas of the neighborhood, you know, there were pockets of crime, and he made a very favorable presentation, much more favorable than I would have done, and because of that, we got the project approved. But well, I tried to hitchhike on to Gus's successes and do a commercial building in downtown, and that didn't quite come out the same as the success we had with the housing. The project was first proposed as an office building running on Broadway and corner of 3rd Street and Broadway, 3rd Street South, and then utilizing the surface parking lot behind that building to put up a 4-story parking ramp and about 60, 70 units of affordable housing. And then, of course, the Skyway connecting it all to the Holiday Inn and the Skyway system. Well, you and I actually looked at that site 12, 14 years ago to do something with it, and at that time, the Mexican restaurant was there, and they had control of that parking lot, so rightfully so, we weren't able to do anything at that time, but we have tried any number of iterations of, we thought we had everything solved most recently, and made another final presentation to the council, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they informed us that they were going to put out a request for proposals, so I guess, I don't know when they're going to get around to that, do you, Mayor? But it's a project that makes so much sense, I guess that's why it'll probably never happen.
So we've mentioned a few of your projects, Park Towers, obviously Annie's Liquor, and some of your housing stuff. What are your 5, in your opinion, each one of you, most prestigious projects you think you've done in Rochester? It doesn't have to be the biggest, but the most prestigious or the most you're most proud of. Name the top 5 if you would.
Okay, I don't know if I can name 5, but I can name one that I think in the state of Minnesota, so the State Housing Finance Agency told me it's the most lucrative senior citizens building ever built in the state of Minnesota, and it's Fontaine Towers. I'm really happy with that building because it wasn't in the Skyway system when they built it. And I was wondering, someday will the Skyway ever get across there? After they built the government center, I thought that would be perfect to hook up a Skyway. Well, it finally happened, and I don't usually like to do this, help the sale, but I put $485,000 into the Skyway system to make sure that we got connected to the downtown. But that building, we've had it for about 33 years now, and we've had probably, I don't know if we've ever had a vacancy. We've had like 100, 150 people on the waiting list, and then that's usually like a 7 or 8 year list, and we have to revamp it from time to time. But in all those years, we've hardly had one vacancy. I don't think we've ever lost a month's rent. So that's as successful as it can get. So that's number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, I think Michael's and on the relationship we've had with the Pappases over the years is probably the most satisfying project and I think the most visible that we've done. Other than that, I guess we did a beautiful 6-story elderly Section 8 project up in Two Harbors, Minnesota that looks over Lake Superior. It's all brick, and it's kind of the same history with, you just don't have vacancies in those kind of projects because us taxpayers are paying the major part of the rent, so it's not hard to rent those. But I'm sure I'm be kicking myself after we leave here, but some that I'm. What do we got, Scott? You got any help out there?
We've been here a lot longer than me.
We did the new building for Olmsted Medical on what is that, 55th? That's a very nice building, and kind of sits out there all by itself. And they were very pleased with the project.
Would you have any estimate off the top of your head? This is probably a tough question, of how many square feet of construction development that you've done in our community in your careers? Do you have any kind of idea, square feet or number of units?
Well, I don't have any idea, but I thought of number 2. And that's the Barnes and Noble building. That's the old Chateau Theater. And I'll tell you what, when I bought that thing from the bank, and I happened to be on the board of the bank at the time, there was pigeons flying in and out of there, and it was the biggest pigeon house in the United States. And so anyway, I got a call from, there in the Galleria, when we built that, early stages, we wanted a bookstore. So I had one of our leasing guys call Dalton's bookstore. And in those days, Dalton's was kind of a big deal in bookstores, but the guy said, no, we wouldn't take a 2,500-foot store in your place, but why don't you call our owner? Who's your owner? Barnes & Noble. I've never heard of Barnes & Noble, so the lease guy came back, but he said, they want 20,000 feet. And my leasing guy said, I told him we don't have 20,000 feet. He told me that. And I says, what do you mean we don't have 20,000 feet? We'll buy the Chateau Theater right next to it, turn it into a bookstore. And, oh, would you do that? Yeah, call him back. So he calls him back, and the guy said, yeah, we're interested. And so the guy comes to town after about 3 months, and by then I had bought it and had lights in it to show it to him. And he said to me, there's no reason for me to go inside there. And I said, why not? He says, because my boss goes to the Mayo Clinic, and he's walked by this building when it was shut down, and he said, you know what, I'd love to put a bookstore in there. So he says, let you and I go to your office and just work out a deal. So I did, and it turned out to be really, I like it. You know, it was something, I sold it because I felt that Barnes & Noble would quit leasing it, and that was one of my few smart deals. I sold it for like 1 or 2 or 3 million, and that was a good price, I thought, in those days. But I had a great lease with Barnes & Noble. Now the lady, now Barnes & Noble's going to move out of there, and the lady wants to sell it. And I'm telling you, I don't know how much value. I don't think it's got much value left. Without a lease, that building, and it's historical, and if you think you got problems with the neighbors, the historical people are not easy to deal with. In fact, you know, I needed to get, I was going to get tax credits, about $500,000, and so I did everything the state of Minnesota told me. They wouldn't let me do this, they wouldn't let me do that, but I can't do this, I can't do that, and we did everything absolutely perfectly. And so I go for my tax credits, and they turned me down. And I said, what do you mean? I did everything the state. No, you shouldn't have put that second floor in there. And I said, well, I had to put the second floor, but we kept it away from the walls, and you could see everything. Well, it doesn't make any difference not giving you tax credits. Well, I thought, you know what? I want to sue those guys, federal government. So I've never sued the federal government before, but I thought, you know, it'd be kind of fun anyway. So I sued them, and I figured, hell, out in Washington, you know, what do they know? So guess who came to town? The judge, and from the guy who was handling it for the federal government. He came and he said, gee, I'm sorry to tell you, but you should have gone to us and not the state. You know, we're the big boss. I said, nobody ever told me that. Well, now you know I'm the next chef for the next job, you know. I felt like saying for the next job, there isn't going to be a historic building in my portfolio. So anyway, but I do really like that. I couldn't wait to see that thing built, and it's kind of a cute old building. So
Well, I have to second you on that. That's really a landmark.
Yeah, don't buy it, tear it down.
Well, I don't know how many feet we built. I don't have any idea, but I do know I've been around so long that they're starting to tear buildings down that I built. I don't know if you count those in the footage or not.
The other day I was at the Rochester Area Builders President's Dinner, and Joe was sitting next to me, and we went around the room talking about our year as president, and I happened to be just in front of Joe. And so I said, you know, I can't think of what went on in 1999 when I was president, so I'm stealing Joe's notes from when he was president. So I reached over and grabbed a piece of paper and I said, we invented the wheel. So anyway, obviously everybody in this room wants to thank you for everything you've done in our industry, and we'd really like you to spend a few minutes on what you think is going to happen from your perspective in the future of downtown, what you guys have in line personally with your projects, and just your thoughts. So let's spend the last few minutes on looking ahead.
Well, be time for a few Q&A too.
Yep.
Gus, you're more in the loop than I am on that.
Okay, well, I can just speak for what our company's got lined up. And it's basically, we're doing a deal down on North Broadway. It's an assisted living place. It's about a $15 million deal, and it's being built by the world's greatest construction company. Weis is building it, and so that's going on. I don't know how many square feet it is, but it's a pretty good size.
About 85 units.
85 units, yeah. But so the next project is one that I'm responsible for in our company, and it's going to be downtown. Today it's at it was at 503,000 feet or something, square feet, but we just couldn't make the numbers work out, so now we've shrunk it to about 412 or 415,000 feet. That'll be about an $80 million addition to the city. And then my son Andy, he bought the building from Joe. We're on 3rd Street. That's Joe's favorite area. He sold the building to Andy, and so we're building a 6 or 7 story office building there. And you know, you have to, if you guys are going to be in the construction business or the development business, one thing you have to have that we haven't talked about, you got to have a lot of good luck. It just doesn't happen because you can think a little and you got guts. You need luck to go along with it. And a perfect example is, Andy was going to build on that corner, he was going to put a restaurant there, a 2nd floor, and he didn't know what the hell he was going to put in there, and maybe a bar on the roof. And what happened? Somebody came along and bought the Associated Bank building, and they bought all the condo owners in there. So, the condo owners all do their business out of there, and they have no place to go. So a block away, Andy was doing his deal, so he contacted those guys, and he's pretty much has the whole building pre-leased. Now, if that guy doesn't come by and buy and now it's a 7-story building instead of one restaurant, and maybe on the 2nd floor. So he got lucky. You know, he's the building, and they want to tear it down. Incidentally, build a great big building there of some kind. They say a 5-star hotel, but if they're going to build a great big building, it can't all be a 5-star hotel. It's got to be some more stuff. But anyway, Andy got lucky. He's pre-leased, and you hardly ever nowadays are pre-leased before you start construction. So he was lucky, and actually, hopefully that I'm not lucky, but ours is going to be an Embassy Suite hotel, and we think, see, we'll have 18 months once we start construction to pre-lease it and go out and we have a lot of overflow business at our current hotels, so we should be lucky with that, hopefully. And we're putting in 84 apartments, maybe 2 stories of offices. It keeps on growing. There wasn't any offices, and I thought, well, why don't we put 1 floor up there? So we added a floor, and we have the tenant for that. It's called Titan. But then last night I got a call from a guy. He says there's this London company. They got tons of money, and they need 10 to 15,000 feet. I said, I got just a place for him. So I had the floor last night. So that's what happens once in a while. The phone rings, and sometimes it's actually good news. So that's that story. Let's see. I don't know. I think we have a couple of projects. Andy says we have about $200 million worth of developments in the hopper right now.
I believe it. Well, I think everybody in the room is very excited about this DMC program. I guess the downside from our standpoint is all of a sudden we've got 2 or 3 more major competitors, and probably many of you will experience the same thing, but everybody is thinking that, you know, we're going to have 20,000 more people working here tomorrow, and that all the construction is going to cut loose tomorrow, so I better get down there and get my share. But I guess I'm not quite sure about the necessity for this plan that they're working on now. Mayor, didn't the city and the chamber and Mayo and the university spent, what, how many 100,000 on a plan not too long ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm not sure why they have to do another one, but
Yeah, a lot of money.
to me, that's really going to kind of slow things down because who knows if you want to make a proposal someplace, how do we know it's going to fit into their plan and that you'll never get it approved? I don't know.
As far as the clinic's plan, it won't be finished till the fall, and they're looking at two major companies that do a master plan for the whole DMC project. But I agree with Joe. I mean, it's to me it's really exciting. You read in the paper last night where Mayo's spending $72 million on 4 or 5 floors out at St. Mary's, and they've got a $33 million project before that. That's $100 million. Let me tell you, this town, if Mayo gets 35,000 to 45,000 more people downtown, I'm sure it'll be the biggest medical center in the world. Which this little town, having the biggest medical center in the world, it's going to be fabulous, I think. And right now, Mayo does business with 137 countries. And the reason people come here is not that it's easy to get here for a lot of people, but Mayo's got such a great reputation that that's why they're doing this. And just so you know the differences between Mayo and Cleveland Clinic, Mayo's revenue, everything put together, is right around $10 billion. Cleveland Clinic is the next closest. It's at $6 billion. And it doesn't, and I know people that have gone to both, and they see Cleveland Clinic doesn't even compare to Mayo. And don't forget, we only have 100,000 people in Rochester, the county about 150. So at Cleveland, out east, they got millions of people, and they don't come anywhere near what Mayo does. Mayo has to draw just about all their business from out of town. Now that's a great thing. That's a great engine. The biggest employer in the state of Minnesota today, and then when they tack on another 35, 45,000 people, it's really going to be huge. This town could very easily be 350 to 400,000 people 20 years from today. So I think that looks great. And I think it's going to be great for all you guys.
Well, before we hand over the microphone to John for some question and answers from the crowd, I'd like to start out with one real quick question, and that is, was there any, during all these years of your friendship and developing Rochester, was there any issues that took place between Joe and the Catholic Mafia and the Greek Orthodox Church?
Well, the Catholics loan us money, so we love them.
Joe, I'm going to borrow your microphone. Sure. If I could, please.
Anybody have a question? It's not so much a question, but I just want to say, thank you to both of you, for what you've done in this community. You guys were taking risks in this community when nobody else saw the opportunity or had the guts to step out there and take that risk. And because of you, others now want to play in the sandbox. So you're kind of a victim of your own success to some extent that you bring more competition in. But it would not have happened without your foresight, without your vision, your stewardship. And I know it's tough, and we talk about neighborhoods, and we talk about, we all have to deal with that, and it's getting tougher and tougher all the time. But, we'll persevere through it, because at the end of the day, the vision is a good vision. The future is a bright future, and it's people like you that have made this all possible. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. If I may want to thank the Rochester area builders. Nemes, for me and our company, has been getting a building permit. And of course, I go back to the days of Garnet Spring when he was a one-man building inspection office, and you walk in with a set of plans and a check, and you walk out with a permit, unless it's an addition on the Mayo Clinic or something. And from that, we progressed to the situation we have now, where you got plan checkers, and I don't know. It's a nightmare. But this recent group that got together, I think, is the biggest step. I mean, the chamber has fought it for years, and every group in town has fought it for years. But I think this group that the builders put together, along with the realtors and the chamber, has been the most significant step in solving the problem, not only of building permits, but of speeding up the development process, which doesn't always go real smooth. So I thank the builders for that.
Any questions? Don't miss this opportunity. May not happen for a while again. Next year, we'll bring it back next year.
We must have covered it well.
I think with EMC, the expectation was that Mayo would kind of lead the charge and the private sector would follow. The impression I have is quite the reverse in the last few months, that the private sector is really driving and initiating some stuff, and the chronological order of things might be somewhat reversed. What do you guys think about that?
Well, you know, Mail's a huge company, and they're not as nimble as little companies like Joe and myself. So it's easy for us to wake up some morning and go to our people and say, what about this idea? Oh yeah, let's do it. Well, Mayo doesn't work that way. I mean, they got 200,000 committees to go through, and on and on and on. But I'll tell you, once they get rolling, they're going to be hard to stop. I mean, they're really working on a great plan for this community, and I know a lot of people in planning and this and that, and you guys are going to be in for the surprise of your life. It's going to be terrific.
Any other questions? Well, Jim, I'm going to bring this back to you to wrap it up then.
Earlier, it reminded me of a little story about when you hollered back at Scott and said, Scott, what kind of jobs we got going on? Reminded me of a story of a couple of old gentlemen that were sitting around the kitchen table one evening, and one says to the other, says, what's new?
He's not talking about us, is he?
No. And the other gentleman said, well, gosh darn it, I went to this great restaurant the other day, and service was outstanding, the prices were reasonable, and food was, you couldn't compare it to any other restaurant in town. And he says, oh really, what's the name of that restaurant? The first older gentleman says, I can't remember. He says, gosh, it sucks to get old when you can't remember stuff. He said, well, I'll give you a little clue, maybe it'll help you remind you. He says, well, anything. He says, well, what's that flower that's red and got thorns? And he said, a rose? He says, that's it. Hey, Rose, what's the name of the restaurant we went to the other night? Anyway, from a great round of applause and a thank you from the Commercial Builders Council of Rochester area builders for these two gentlemen. Merry Christmas to everybody.